For the longest time, Cedar Point was known by many as the best amusement park in the world. It was the self-branded roller coaster capital of the world, and it has a fantastic collections of rides, coasters, and experiences. However, in 2023, a new king is in town. This is how Cedar Point got dethroned by none other than the park in the spotlight, Hersheypark. Let me just say, I don't mean this as an attack against Cedar Point. Cedar Point is still my favorite amusement park. I'm just stating that Hersheypark could very well be better for most guests in 2023. Through a combination of events, Hersheypark could be laying on top of the theme park list. These events are the rise of Hersheypark and the decline of Cedar Point. Let's start with the latter. Cedar Point since 1870 was on top of everyone's list as the best amusement park. How could people not love a park that sits on a peninsula in the middle of a Great Lake? With plenty of coasters for everyone, including a new family coaster on the way, it truly has something for everyone. So what happened? Once a fan's favorite amusement park has fallen off a lot of people's lists, including people like Airtime Thrills. Even other people have taken to the internet to express their hatred of Cedar Point recently. I could make a whole video on my issues with Cedar Point recently, but that is not what this video is about, so I'll get to the point. Cedar Point has had countless maintenance problems, long lines, and wacky systems in place for guests that just make it more of a hassle to visit than it should be. If you look on any wait time app for Cedar Point, you'll notice more rides closed than open, and all of the wait times being 45 minutes or above, even for family coasters like Iron Dragon and Gemini. Why is this the case? Ever since 2020, with the addition of 2 new passes, extended early entry, and expanded hours, ride lines have been very, very long. Also, maintenance. For some reason, operations and maintenance of the coasters has dropped. Rides are constantly breaking down. Even reliable rides like Valraven and Gatekeeper have been down a lot. Also, rides have been closed for expensive periods, and the dragster issue that remains a mystery isn't painting a better picture. Cedar Point seems to have been on the rise recently with new additions, but they still should put into account guest experiences before anything. So what happened with Hersheypark? Before 2012, Hersheypark was labeled as just an okay amusement park. It had Stormrunner and Fahrenheit, 2 pretty good intimate coasters, but were rather uncomfortable with their restraints. However, the opposite occurred with Hersheypark and Cedar Point. Instead of focusing on adding a ton of rides, which Hersheypark still does, Hersheypark focused on the guest experience. In addition to adding Sky Rush, a huge intimate hyper for thrill seekers, they took into account every guest and improved everything from operations to family rides to their chocolate factory to even updating the restraints on both the previously mentioned intimates. After adding a family spinning coaster called Laugh Track, the park was really on the rise. They updated their already pretty good water park called the Boardwalk, work on their zoo and chocolate factory, and then added Chocolate Town, a huge new midway and entrance renovation to improve guests' first impressions of the great park. Also, they added a B&M Hyper to contrast with their Intimate Hyper, so every guest can experience whichever Hyper they prefer. And now, in 2022, after renovating their mediocre Boomerang to a candy theme, which attracted tons of guests, they announced Wildcat's Revenge. Wildcat's Revenge I made a video on recently, the link is in the description, but is another revamp of an old coaster. With this new addition, Hersheypark no longer has the RMC hole that Cedar Point had. You can tell from these expansions, Hersheypark cares about its guests and the experience of the park. Let's get into some comparisons between the two parks to show which park is stronger in select categories. You may notice that Hersheypark has more coasters geared towards everything versus Cedar Point's specific thrill seeker audience. Cedar Point has Corkscrew, a very rough and uncomfortable looping coaster compared to Hershey's Super Duper Looper, a smooth and more family-oriented Schwarzkopf Looper that was recently repainted. This family coaster also glides to the treetops versus Corkscrew sitting over a midway and next to facilities. While Cedar Point has Valraven, Iron Dragon, Gatekeeper, and Rougarou that Hersheypark cannot compete with, Hersheypark also has Fahrenheit, Wild Mouse, and Jolly Rancher Remix that Cedar Point can't compete with. Trailblazer is a smoother and more scenic mine train compared to Cedar Creek Mine Ride. Stormrunner and Maverick are very similar coasters, with Stormrunner being shorter but also having a more powerful launching system. Gemini and Lightning Racer are both dueling coasters, but Lightning Racer has the benefit of a more thrilling layout. Laugh Track and Wild Mouse are both spinning coasters, but Laugh Track has the benefit of a cooler theme, higher capacity, more extreme layout, and an incredible lighting package inside of a building. Blue Streak and Comet are very similar, but Comet is much smoother and has more comfortable airtime moments despite being older. Candemonium is a smoother and newer version of Magnum, and Sky Rush is a smaller but more extreme Millennium Force. While Raptor beats out Great Bear, Hersheypark has Cedar Point beat in almost every way, especially with Dragster being closed for the year and with the renovation being most likely taming the ride down. And those saying Steel Vengeance has no competition, the brand new Wildcats Revenge has that handled, and it will most likely be more intense than Steel Vengeance. Hersheypark has more value in their thrill coasters than Cedar Point, and also more value in their family coasters. Cedar Point does beat Hersheypark in their flat ride collection, but Hershey also has some unique family flats including the Howler, and also 3 different drop towers in varying sizes for their guests instead of 2 of the same size. While Cedar Point has the beach, Hersheypark has a zoo and a chocolate factory, and a free of admission water park compared to Cedar Point's separate admission. Do you see what I'm getting at? The agreement among the community of Cedar Point's recent decline, in addition to Hersheypark's stronger lineup of attractions, shows how Hershey has been on an extreme rise. While Cedar Point may be better for families now, you can't deny Hershey has quite a bit more bang for its buck. I feel like Cedar Point knows this though, considering Hershey is within a day's drive from Cedar Point. Cedar Point has already stepped up its theming game, so maybe they would have something up their sleeve to keep them ahead of the new coaster capital of the world. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Comment what you think of Cedar Point and Hersheypark, and have a great rest of your day.